Hi, and thanks for joining us here at Rose Quartz Mediumship podcast, where we love anything and everything healing and metaphysically based. I want to talk a little bit about shame and guilt. And I want to tell you a story about shame and guilt connected to a dirty little secret that I have. So some of you know this. Some of the people who are in my reality know this, and some do not. I have for years consumed Diet Mountain Dew. And it's not something that I'm proud of because I recognize that it is chock-a-block full of chemicals and is not actual food. It's just straight up chemical. And relatively recently, I stopped drinking Diet Mountain Dew. And I've done this a couple different times in my life, but this feels very different to me. And I want to talk about how I landed there. So I'm going to back up and tell another part of the story. A couple of months ago, I was hosting a workshop, and I was driving there in the morning and recognized that I wanted a little caffeine. And I was actually on the phone with Kevin, and I said, I really want a Diet Mountain Dew, but I'm pretty positive that one of the participants at the workshop, who I know fairly well, is going to shame me if I walk in with a Diet Mountain Dew. And he said, you just own it. Just own your Diet Mountain Dew drinking and go drink the Diet Mountain Dew in front of her. So I stop at a convenience store. I get a Diet Mountain Dew. I go to the workshop and I'm drinking it. And the individual who I thought was going to shame me did exactly that. It was like public shaming, right? They said to me, why are you doing that? What is wrong with you? This doesn't add up for me. You're somebody who's into wellness, and here you are drinking chemicals. And they spoke to me about how they had shamed their son into not drinking Mountain Dew and how that had worked as a 12-year-old, right? And here I am, a 41-year-old, drinking Diet Mountain Dew. And I had made the decision when I purchased the Diet Mountain Dew that I wasn't going to feel shame, even though I knew I was going to be shamed. And so I really owned my decision. I said, yeah, I know it's gross. And I'm doing it. I'm drinking the Diet Mountain Dew. And it was a shift for me because it is not the first time I've been shamed for drinking Diet Mountain Dew. And you know what? Like, rightfully so, right? It is a gross habit. And I didn't feel shame because I was very consciously making this choice. And I also knew that I was probably getting closer to being done with it. And 2 weeks later, something like that, I was with a client and I carried in a cup of Diet Mountain Dew. And this client of mine is nurturing and gentle and soft and loving and compassionate and empathetic. And she looked at me and she said, oh, Erin, I wish you loved yourself enough that you didn't do that. And it was the most gentle, loving way to invite me not to do it anymore. And later that evening, I was sitting in meditation, kind of reflecting about my day, and that experience popped up and how different it felt in my body. And I recognized that there were some parallel there between the experience that I'd had at the workshop and the experience that I had with this one-on-one client. And one was a very shamey approach, and one was a very compassionate, loving approach. Guess which one worked? It was the last day that I had Diet Mountain Dew. And it was a couple months ago now. And I just want to say that it is my truth, which doesn't have to be yours, that we are just projecting our stuff out into the world. So in one sense, I can look at this individual at the workshop and say, she shamed me. No. No. Absolutely not. I felt shame. I didn't like the way that I was showing up in the world. And I was holding that frequency. It was incongruent with who I am. But it was who I was being. I was being incongruent with who I am. The most authentic version of me would not be drinking Diet Mountain Dew. And so there was incongruency there. And so I can point the finger at her and say, she shamed me. No, she mirrored back for me the shame that I was feeling inside of myself. And that's how the universe works, in my opinion. I feel something, and the universe is going to mirror it back through experiences and people and places so that I can see that inside of me. I take full responsibility for the shame that I felt in the moment at that workshop. And I could also recognize that there was a shift. That while this individual was shaming me, I didn't actually feel shame. And it was the beginning of me recognizing that I was transitioning into a spot where I was really ready to be done with that behavior, with that self-sabotaging behavior. And the client who met me with love and compassion, truly, there was no part of her that was trying to make me feel bad. None. She was offering me the opportunity to love myself enough to make a different choice. She was only mirroring back the place that I had gotten to internally. And when she mirrored it back for me, I was able to see it and experience it differently and make a different choice. But I only had that experience with that client because I had had an internal shift. I only had that experience with the individual in the workshop because that was what was going on internally for me. And in my opinion, this is the beautiful thing about energy and the way that the universe works and law of attraction and mirrors. Your reality is only mirroring back for you what is happening internally. You are a frequency match for shame around this behavior because you are shaming yourself. You feel shame. You know that it's incongruent with who you are. By you, I mean me. I knew that it was incongruent with who I am, but it was who I was being. And so the universe mirrored that back for me. It's how energy works. And as I transitioned, and as I shifted, and as I changed, my experience externally in the 3D world changed. And it's all just me experiencing my own energy that is being mirrored back at me through other people, through experiences, through places. And so I just wanted to tell this story because I think sometimes it's really easy for us to point a finger at somebody else. And that's just our inability to want to look at ourselves. And so if you can really explore what inside of me am I feeling, am I a frequency match for in this situation? When you get into that place, or when I get into that place, when I can take radical personal responsibility for my reality, gosh, it gives me the ability to be different, to be the most congruent version of me, to be the most authentic version of me, to be the most healed version of me. If I view these experiences as something outside of me that I have no control over, then I'm not going to change. But if I view them as a mirror for my own internal energy, I have the ability to change my reality in a second. Because I'm the one who is creating the frequency of the experiences and people that are in my reality. And that place for me is really magical. It is really empowering. And it can sometimes feel frustrating, like, oh, I have to take personal responsibility for everything. Yeah. But there is so much empowerment that goes along with that. And I just wanted to share that story because I think it's a really beautiful example where I can see my own internal bullshit is being played out in the 3D world. And that happens all day, every day. And this is just one example. But I wanted to throw it out there in the event that it's helpful for you to see the way that your internal stuff is being mirrored back at you in the 3D world. And when you can see it for what it is, then you're also giving yourself this really beautiful gift of growth, of healing, of change. I hope that you have a really beautiful morning, day, evening, or night, wherever it is that this podcast finds you. And I really appreciate you being here with us.